Well, hello there.
Hello.
This is ARN. Um, I wrote down a few funny things, and then I walked into this room and there was a David Hawkins book, and I read a few things that are really close. I just like opened to a random page,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
close to what I was writing. So, got some topics. How's things on your end? What's anything funky and fancy?
Yeah, I got a few things here as well.
You go first. I'll
Okay.
segue.
Well, one of them is you had mentioned a while ago. What is ARN?
What? What
And
is this?
and to talk about, you know, what the heck
What
this
is
is.
this?
I mean, logistically, it's uh it's just a platform where we have weird conversations that then can be translated into parts of novels at some point. Um, that's like the fundamental, you know, logistic part.
Yeah, I guess where this all started for random first time viewer purposes, or if anybody wants to know, is that we used to do these things called LV walks, where Lantern Valley was this big art project that we were doing like 15 years, 10 to 15 years ago is kind of when it started. And we've kind of been doing it since, but we used to go on walks to, there's like this little crescent area, and then it leads to a beach, and then that beach leads to another beach, and then we come back to our house. And on those walks, we often talked about how we should record them because we said so many cool things. And most of it had to do with the book, but a lot of it trickled into life, and then life stuff would trickle into the book. And then one day, I think we just stopped doing LV walks because it was winter and cold or something. And then eventually we recorded a couple and we were like, this is a good idea. Maybe we should put it on YouTube. And then we started recording these and putting them on YouTube. So these were originally just the conversations that we would naturally have while talking about art projects and life, and then thought they were worth recording. And now they're kind of like we talk about things differently, obviously, when in front of a camera, and we're kind of loosely addressing as if there's a third audience member because it used to be just us two talking. But it's effectively the same topics, just framed differently and put on video.
Yeah, that's basically it. Um, and and yeah, those talks we often did were for the projects, and so they're basically still for the projects. And yeah,
Yeah.
and on a more like metaphysical level or something, what what ARN talks are, um, is sort of like, I don't know, just a big mess of different things that kind of all point to the same, like being aware and growing spiritually and um, stuff like that.
Stuff we think is cool that we would put in stories. In the speaking of which, I was just thinking few days ago, I felt like there was something that I haven't done in a long time, and then so I checked I have like checklists and stuff, so I like scrolled down it and eventually found transcribe all ARN videos. I haven't done that in a while. It's gonna take so long. I think it's the last. It's like I don't think I've transcribed any from this year yet, so it's a bit. So many other things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's one. Um, Another point I had was enjoying now, because later you'll realize you were enjoying it. So if you thought if you were experiencing now whatever's happening and you're thinking you're not enjoying it, uh, just kind of, a reminder you can have for yourself as well. Actually, at some point, I'll look back, and even though I'm feeling like I don't enjoy this right now, I'll realize I actually did enjoy it as it was, and therefore, just having that reminder can just help you to actually enjoy it now because you are experiencing now, instead of, yeah, thinking or not, and then realizing later on in hindsight, actually, that was good.
The thing that randomly came to mind there was the with a bunch of smashers in the local Smash community. Super Smash Bros is a video game, and I used to play it competitively at a super high level. And I went to one of the guys' houses for like a little Smash night. They like get-togethers once in a while and play Ultimate, the new game that I don't play. But they got together, and then I was like, "Hey, I'm around, so I could come too." So I joined, and I brought Project M, so they got to see me play that and realized that just what the skill difference is between me and them. But we played Ultimate, and then they were at first surprised that I could keep up with them because these are like some of the best players in the area. And then they saw me play Project M. They're like, this all makes sense. And but we started talking about just like the original Genesis tournament, which is like a tournament from 2008, I think, nine maybe. That I happened to be there, and at the time it was the biggest tournament around. And they were like, to us, this like legendary, and you were there. But it's one of those things where it's like at the time I just was there. I actually got disqualified from the tournament because I kept going to Costco with people because that was more fun and things like that. And the while at that tournament, it's one of those things where the if something is big and legendary, and it was probably big and legendary because a bunch of people were there. I just happened to be one of the people there, so it kind of makes sense that you would eventually find somebody who happened to be there because it was big. That means a lot of people were there. That's why it was legendary. So it's like it's not a big deal, and to me, to them, they're like, this is legendary, and to you, it's probably like just whatever. It's just another tournament. I'm like, yeah, like we didn't even have internet. So we took over the Ramada Hotel and stuff. But then I was thinking how there's this one guy who he lost a match against somebody else. And when we went to Costco, he was so pissed off while walking through the Costco trip the whole time. And like he just had the worst day of his life because he lost his set. He was just like so angry. And we're all, most of the other people there were like trying to calm him down because we were in the middle of Costco when he was talking about how he just wanted to like kill this guy. And we're just like, well, and then for the next 10 years, all he talked about was how that was like the greatest the greatest tournament he's been to, all this other stuff. So he missed the whole day because he was pissed off. And then for the next decade, he's like, man, that was such a good time. It's like, dude, for one of like the 4 whole days you were there, you were just living out of your mind. Like, enjoy where you are in the moment. But who
Well,
knows? You're gonna look back and be like, wow, this is fun.
suppose there's a level of swinging between emotions that then makes it more like it stands out more, maybe because you were super happy and then you were super sad, and you're like, in hindsight, that was super awesome because it was like an experience.
Yeah.
uh
He was fully there for that at least a bit, and then lost himself. So like it was so strong. Yeah.
and what also made me think, like, um sometimes sometimes you can know that something's epic, and it's like, this is legendary, and it while it's like happening. And other times it's only after that you can realize that something was legendary, which
Mhm.
is kind of interesting.
I think I maybe knew that one, like Genesis, that original tournament was legendary because it was the first time that Europe had come over to America, and there was like one player from Europe who was beating all the Americans, and it was just like this is going to change everything, and it really did. But even Sakurai developing Super Smash Bros. Changed the world, and it was like a legendary thing. And just hearing the stories of him going around and like, did you hear how he got Sora into the game from Disney?
In the new one, yeah, you told me, yeah.
Yeah, just like scheming behind the scenes, like all this stuff, like so many legendary kind of things that are, you know, maybe they don't seem legendary, and then you think about it, it's like, wow, that's a big move right there. Like some things you kind of know, but when he was going and scheming behind the scenes to get like a Disney character into a different game and like sneaking behind to do that, he was probably just in the moment of being like, I just need to make sure this works. But now it's like, dang.
uh,
Yeah.
Wonder.
Yeah. One thing I know that for sure it felt legendary was my first Vipassana course. I remember just sitting there. repeatedly, like almost every day, and being like, "This is the best. Like this is it." Yeah.
I was just thinking about. I'm so amazed how the Nintendo creators created these iconic characters. Like if you look at Bowser in like the RPG Seven Stars of like Super Nintendo Bowser, to like Jack Black's portrayal of Bowser in this, newest movie or whatever. He's from the get go. He's got this personality that doesn't change. It's consistent. Bowser, his silly jokes and kind of just being the Lord of Evil, but kind of a joke for the whole thing. And it's like right off the bat, and it's not just him, but it's the Mario's like appearance and Peach's, and there's little variations, but really from the get go, they created all these things, a Mushroom Kingdom, all these things, and they just kept it the same forever.
And it like only ever built upon it, never
Yeah.
altered it. Like, Luigi in the new movie, in the new shows, the new games, and all this other stuff, he's just more and more Luigi,
Yeah.
more of himself, and not like, oh, Luigi also has this other angle to him or this side of to him that you didn't know of before. It's like, no, he just look more Luigi.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I don't understand how they managed to, lock onto something and then just have that be their like 50-year or whatever, how long it's been that they just hone in on that one thing, for every aspect of it. It's nuts.
Well, a lot of it definitely is kind of the uh, de- determination or like discipline of just making sure that they don't veer off course. And
Yeah.
then a lot of it too is like, obviously, make Mario, and it's like they don't know 50 years from now it's going to be there, but he's designed with that in mind of like, he was marketed and made this thing that we're never going to have Mario in a game that isn't Mario themed. And if there's going to be a thing, he's going to be on the face of it, and he's going to be like this all the time. And like, just, the marketing was there, the genius behind it was there. And
Yeah,
then,
well, that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. Really, is that the marketing and the genius of choosing that idea and
yeah,
then just
never
winning
veer off course. Yeah.
winning with
Well, even with things like novel writings and stuff, uh, the main things that throw readers of the books is like this, the inconsistencies, or something that's slightly off, or like a character does something that that's that's not what they would have done or something. Yeah. Even I still remember when you were reading Name of the Wind, and you were talking about how this one scene quote did something, and you were like, Colt didn't do that. This seems out of character. And then you find out later why he did that thing. And it's like, that makes sense. Like when you can get a character that well,
yeah.
and the thing that throws people out of stories is when the characters are off. And like, you can't find a picture of Luigi in a Nintendo franchise thing where he's not that. Like,
Yeah.
there's no offness.
To clarify, just because it's really cool, when I was reading the second Name of the Wind book, The Wise Man's Fear, there's a scene where Kavoth, the main character, was talking to someone, and then the guy said something, and then I just knew it, just like innately was like, Kavoth would have said something back there. I don't understand why he didn't say something back, and it just seemed odd to have like this kind of missing dialogue that I just felt like would be there. And then I realized reading onward that the reason he didn't reply in the moment where I thought he would reply is because he was thinking about something. He just realized that this guy did a bad thing and was hiding it or whatever. So he just came to this realization, and that's why he didn't express something vocally back. And it's like to for me to understand that just through words on paper, like it's crazy.
Solid writing. Yeah. Kit, our boss at the bakery, just today was, she's reading The Power of Now, which is kind of cool. And the there's some part. I think she said she was reading The Little Prince and something else too to her kids, and she was talking about how a lot of these books, there's a lot looked into them. Like The Little Prince, for example, has so many different interpretations of it and stuff. And people talking about like what the author intended and whatnot, and then her interpretation is wildly different than anything she's read about and all this other stuff. So she started to talk about the author intent and the reader intent and interpretations and all this other stuff from work, and to for an author to write something in such a way that it's aligned and the readers are interpreting something that is like so subtle like that, so not even on the page, it's actually something missing.
Yeah.
And to still like get that across, like the often when something is written or an author puts something out into the world, it's taken in wild directions, which is kind of the point of creating things. And then when they made the Matrix, sure they were reading a lot of Nausicaa and all this other stuff when they made it, but now it's everybody talks about the blue pill or the red pill, and like things are in the paradigm in the pop culture. Writing Alice in Wonderland, everybody talks about down the rabbit hole. Like all these terms have really taken off. So did the author intend that down the rabbit hole is like there's no term fitting for how far down the rabbit hole does this go? Like
Kind of doubt it.
yeah. Like
I think, most people just kind of, I don't know. I think there's a lot that just happens by fluke, and people aren't as analytically deciphering all the angles of something, and they're just like, oh, this sounds cool or something, and yeah.
yeah, getting
I read the Winnie the Pooh, the Art of Winnie the Pooh recently, and the book talks about the creation of Winnie the Pooh, and I don't really know what I want to say about it, but it's it was just kind of a collaboration, and just one person would draw this, and it's based off their kids' teddies, and then based off the author's kid, and whatever, and just kind of grows into,
slap it together and ta-da.
yeah. And then Winnie the Pooh becomes
A sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just before this, I was well, in this Power of or what is this? The Wisdom by David R. Hawkins. There's a section in here that's I can just read the line, but it starts off like, people think it's what you do or what you say or how you behave that matters, but no, those are the consequences of that which you are. So that which you are, if you sit alone in a cave, is influencing the consciousness, and goes on and on. But just the basic premise or basic idea of how it's never anything that actually happens out there in the world based on what you do that matters. Any like it wouldn't even happen if it weren't for how you are. So how you are is the thing that dictates absolutely everything else. And that whole just that paradigm of like, Winnie the Pooh is a collaboration, and it just keeps going or whatever. And it's just these people creative and having fun and playing or whatever, and it just goes. Sakurai just being like, I want to make Smash Bros. And I want to do this thing, and trying to like scheme his way to do it to get past all the like production and higher administrative levels in the way. That's just how he is. And so this thing comes out. Like the how you are is where everything of significance happens. And then stuff comes of that. But the stuff doesn't actually matter because it's how you are that changes everything. It like actually changes the world. And yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the stuff that people resonate with Winnie the Pooh, and so it's their, that's affecting them, and then then that impacts who they are. But it's who they are that then dictates what they do with that, right? Like, reminds me of a quote from Maggie's teacher, which is, doesn't matter what you believe, it matters what you do with what you believe. Right. And what else made me think of oh, and just I was thinking about the way that, Sakurai, Winnie the Pooh creators or whatever, they were doing their thing, being creative and whatever, and creating stuff. But then other people were doing their thing, wanting to make money and whatever. And so then the publisher people meet the creative people, and then they can produce something into the world that, right. But both only exist. The whole publishing thing only exists because people are being a certain way and they want to create that, and then the only creative people are doing stuff because they want to create something. And
Yeah. It's funny, even before it doesn't matter what you believe or what it matters what you do with what you believe. The doing before any of that is the fact that you can believe it all. Like the that is like a root that's even before that, and then there's probably even a root before that. Like you can just take things so many layers back, and then it's like, how are you right now? Like how are you being? And yeah, firing the baby mind, that old Lantern Valley chapter. I don't know. I can't remember what it was about at all or what was in it. But that topic came up when I was talking with Troy the other day. He was talking about how he went to some lady, and uh, similar to the difference between like believing, doing something with what you believe, and then uh, the thing she was talking about apparently was like a lot of people say that they want to do something like work on their spiritual stuff, work on the mind, something like that, but they they might say that and like firmly want to and all this other stuff, but their like belief is slightly off where they don't actually think it's going to work. They don't actually think they can spiritually grow or be okay with things. Like they're like, this issue I have is set in stone. I'm going to go do work on it, but they don't actually believe that there's actually like their will and capacity to change is being overwritten by this paradigm and wall that they can do it at all. Like they don't think it's possible. So like that core belief is just overriding any work that you can do. So even if you like want to do something, it doesn't work if deep down somewhere in there it's like, no, it's not going to work. Like then it's not going to work.
I I'm doing a market in May where I'll be doing mini tarot readings on the spot and stuff like that. And so I wrote, and then selling tarot readings and stuff. And I wrote a little sheet up today, and it was saying how, most people have something they want to change in their lives, but they feel stuck. They don't know like how to change it. And but you're smart. If you did know how to change it, you would have done it already. So the reason is not happening is because you're somehow unconsciously, unaware of what you're doing, which is creating what you are having, and then, um, you know, finding new pathways will get you into being able to do something different. But you would have changed it if you knew how already, and so it's yeah, just
That's what actually what the lady Troy talked to said was like when he went to her, she's like, you basically have fire in the mind. Like that's where the fire in the baby mind comes from. It's like you have this mind that's just innocently going to work, but it's doing so much and it's not helping you because like you can be as smart as you want, and if there's like this little thing in the way and you're just like, no, gotta do work and blah, 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 it's just like it's just on fire. You can't. It's not gonna work.
yeah. Yeah, need some water first before you try to do stuff with the fire. You know.
It's like going to all the hot coals and like
Yeah.
eventually it cools down and there's no fire and it's like, oh, clarity.
Yeah. That reminds me of the other thing I wrote down. The only other thing was um, parts learning or system learning, which speaks to people, and I think we've maybe mentioned it before, but people who, or just a method of trying to make change by thinking in individual parts. So you could say, oh, I got to do this thing, but meanwhile you're doing that because you're doing it from a thing of fire or whatever, like a state of fire that you have to change something individually, but it's like deal with the fire, and then your whole system's going to be different, and all the different things you could do are all going to be looking different because you've actually dealt with the orchestration of your whole self. That then your uh, your method for changing things or approaching whatever you need to do is going to be totally different than seeing it fragmented because you're thinking fragmented already.
That's extremely similar to something I wrote a similar thing about, but a totally different topic about exactly this. And it was a chat I was having with Troy where he was talking about like there's all these almost like the ends of the branches, and like you start on the end of a branch and like I have this problem where I'm anxious about this something something, and then you work back through the process and that stage. And I was trying to tell him of like if all these branches are just showing you that you have an issue with something else and then something else, and eventually it all goes back to the same root. Why not just work on that root problem? Because if you're just working on the root problem, like you're all the things that are just showing you that you have a problem rooted down. Like if you can get to that root, then you're solving all the problems. So you get to that thing. Is the reason I wrote that though is because of talking almost more interpretation things of like the author intent, reader intent, or things like that. But that happens in everything. And me and him having that conversation of me talking about if you develop like awareness, balance of the mind, clarity, all this stuff, then the thing that you're all the things like if you take 5 things that are all showing you that you have a problem with attachment or a problem with this and like all the way down to that root, but you're working on the root, these are all going to go away or they'll shift or something because you're working on the thing that's actually causing them. And he was like, but then you're just bypassing the problem that you have to work on the process. And it's like, no, it's not bypassing anything. You just know where it leads already. You just work on the thing that's causing it. And like we were both talking about the same thing, but he was interpreting it as bypassing the problems that, and his mind is stuck in this idea of process, which is exactly what the lady told him about his fiery mind. She's like, you don't have to do as much stuff to get like to fix your the problems that you have. And he was like, but I always think in process. I'm like something happens, like what do I do about it? So like me and him were doing the same thing as him and that lady of like how to just you can just work on you. Yeah. Same
Yeah,
thing.
how to, rather than saying it's skipping steps that need to be done, you're skipping steps that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
And
Instead of touching the fire and being like, ow, that's hot, go be like, what do I do with fire? Oh, I throw water on it. Like you
yeah,
don't have to stick your hand in it to know what to do about it.
his process is like, oh, this little thing's burning, this little thing's burning, this little thing's burning. It's like, we'll just get to the source of the fire. And that also makes me think of, I think I mentioned it in a previous ARN thing, but you could go around, you go fix that one problem that's this branch of the tree, and by fixing that problem, you're actually creating a problem on another branch of the tree because you fixed that thing, but you didn't actually get to the root. So then it causes something else to happen that's not, and it just becomes endless extra work that never gets to the main issue.
Yeah. This is I only watched up to the first break on the Feldenkrais video.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was basically just vaguely that topic in like different wording
Yeah.
for like whole first chunk is just that process. And it's just you have this little issue, you have this little issue and that little issue. You fix one of these issues, it might cause a fourth issue, but you fixed one, so now you still have 3 issues, but you fixed one, but you got a fourth. So it's like it doesn't do anything. Yeah.
I didn't send you this one, but it was the first. I think I sent you the third in the series or something. But the first one in the series, we were talking about basics of things, or like the basics of learning, and like what's beginner learning versus advanced learning. And there's a lot of funny things in it. It's like, am I only for advanced people because I think that advanced topics should be covered at the beginning. Or does that make me a beginning person? Because, or like, how do you go beyond what's advanced? Well, you simplify what's advanced, or you make the basics complex, or like it's just this layered, convoluted mess of like when you get into words, how what is learning and how do you optimize it, and is do you start with something that's so simple that you never progress into advance, or like how just very interesting conversation about the
This is
layers.
almost identical in terms of similarity, but from a like completely different angle and topic. Was so this is actually similar to the kind of talking and interpreting a conversation a different way too. Kind of connect to a few things, but I with this the group of three, like Luke, Parker, Justin, like and Dan, that Smasher area. The I forget what they were talking about, but they mentioned like Adderall and a few other things that help with like sports enhancing drugs and things like that. And then one of them was like, oh, it also does these effects. And then I made the offhand comment, well, it does a lot of other things too, but we don't talk about those. It's not marketed for those. And then they thought I was like referring to something specific, almost like kind of it was a joke of like, well, we don't talk about those. And I was like, no, I'm just, it's marketed for what it does, but it does a lot. And and then we had a conversation of just eventually they figured out what I was pointing at, but just like the way a drug would be marketed is like, and NyQuil is a good example of it. It like it causes drowsiness, but it gets rid of your sore throat and it does like 10 other things. So they couldn't figure out what to do with it because it has like 10 effects. And then they're like, it makes people sleepy, and it heals sore throats, but it does like 8 other things. So let's just market it for those two and call it like a nighttime sore throat healer. It has these other effects. We just won't talk about those. So like you solve these two problems because that's what it's marketed for. They just didn't market it for all the other ones. And then you have all these other effects. So you cause a bunch more problems or like potential things by solving like a minor other thing. And like instead of looking at it as a holistic approach, there's no way you would actually be able to list all of the things it does. We just have limited words to be like, oh, it also does this, it also does this, it also does this. Like we can list like quite a long list. So side effects on things are usually a long list. They're just effects that aren't marketed for. And it's the same idea of just what is the whole thing. If you do something to one thing, like I'm going to solve my sore throat and get a little drowsy so I can sleep better, you're affecting the whole system. And who knows what that is. Like it's a sludge of stuff and it's all working. So yeah, same idea.
It reminds me, I forget exactly what the quote is, but uh, just like if you're treating symptoms, you what is it? You're causing disease, or it's not quite that, but it's along the same lines. But I'm trying to think of exactly what the words were. Um, but I think it was one of those like
If you're
muscular.
working on the branches, you're just like stirring up the roots. If you're working on all these little things on fire, you're just fueling the fire.
Yeah.
What are some other things here? Another topic that, not topic, but example of almost that same thing. I wrote down, I had 3 conversations. This is another one that's just similar to like with everything we've mentioned so far is uh, Chris has a roommate named Cora, and she was talking about how she's in like some kind of sciencey university, something for food or something, and she just learned like that shouldn't like that you shouldn't or why you shouldn't or something about why you don't eat something really hot and then something really cold, and then uh, Chris said he learned that too. Like he read it in a book just a couple years ago, and like they're just like learning these things. And then that was after they heard me talking with somebody else for a while. And then Cora was like, "You seem really smart. When was it?" And I was like, "Okay, maybe." And then she's like, "Yeah, but you have like knowledge and stuff. So like, when did you learn that you shouldn't eat hot things and then cold things?" And I was like, like what? This random piece of knowledge. And then I like instead of answering the question directly, I started to talk about how like most of your learning is just going to come if you're like present and washing dishes or something. It's like when is the first time that you learned that light switches usually turn on and not off? like that basic thing is like you can't really point to a moment you learned it. You probably, once in a while turn one on and it's like okay, it's consistent. And then once in a while you find one that turns off and it's like, oh, okay, that's different. But most of the time you just turn them on. And like you just do that by being aware and doing it. And it's like, okay, that's how it works. And then she was like, no, but like this one piece of knowledge, like really trying to hammer in just, but like when did you learn this one thing? And then eventually Chris was beside me washing dishes. And then she was there and a couple others. I was like, the very first time I ate something hot and then ate something cold, and I happened to be present in the moment. And then if I didn't learn it that time, if I did it, I would have noticed because I was present in the moment that time. And then the next time, if that happened again, I ate something hot and cold, and I happened to be present in the moment, then I learned it that time because I was like, oh, look, this happens. And then they're like, oh, just being present in the moment. I'm like, that's what I'm trying to get at. Most of your learning is like when you're not thinking and not like trying to learn knowledge and all this other stuff, and you just happen to be where you are and you're letting stuff assimilate and things are working out, and then you're aware. That's it. That's
Well,
where all learning is.
yeah, I mean, you can read in a book, don't eat something hot after something cold, and unless you're paying attention when it happens, then you're not going to actually experience. Oh, this is something I don't want to do. And it says you don't want to do this. Well, I'm not going to actually know that unless I'm actually experiencing it, and that takes some awareness.
And then the almost like the lack of presence too of if you do something like smoke a cigarette and then cough after, there's no presence, no presence. You can know how it's working and all that. So the knowledge didn't help anyway. So what was the point of the knowledge? It's like the belief and the experience and the way you are that has to change for the knowledge to even mean anything. So why would you even read a book? Like unless you're gonna be where you are and like learn to live, then any knowledge is useless. So what are you going to school for if you can't even be present in the moment? Learn to be present in the moment, then you go to school. They're doing it all wrong. Yeah.
As Krishnamurti says, there's one book, and you read it, and it's life. Yeah, and one page is the whole book. So, or back to the definition of ARN, and what Krishnamurti says, that he said the same thing his whole life, but he said it 1,000 ways. That's what ARN is.
Yeah, very much.